Welcome to the WNBF UK Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the WNBF UK Podcast with me, Sarah Glanville, as your host. Today we are joined by WNBF UK athlete, drug tester and NPA Lightweight British champion, David Taylor. Hello Dave, how are you?
Hey, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I am good, thank you. I'm good. Glad you're here. So Dave has been competing in British natural bodybuilding for 9 years, and he was an integral part of the WNBF UK over the last few years as it got up and running. He is one of our drug testers, and he competed himself in Supernaturals in October 2022. Dave, I honestly can't tell you how much I've been looking forward to this episode. I know how passionate you are about natural sport, and I can't wait to hear you talk about your own journey as a natural athlete. I also think our listeners will get so much understanding from your experience and knowledge of the WNBF UK drug testing policy. I think the perfect place to start today is to have you tell us all about how you became one of the drug testers with the WNBF UK.
Okay, so it's a long story, but I'll keep it short. Like you said, I've been competing a very long time. My first show was back in 2013 with the BNBF. And over the years, with mixed success, I kind of progressed in bodybuilding. And after the BNBF Scottish in 2019, Andy, president of WNBF, basically sent me a message saying that I had done really well and I'd really upped my physique, to that effect, because that's how he is. He's a really nice guy. Yeah. And from there, we kind of like spoke back and forth, formed a friendship. And in the end, I ended up working with them first as a client and then as a coach through their prep company, Pro Prep, helping athletes prep for stage. And from there, it was kind of like a natural progression because Andy and Steph both know how passionate I am about the sport and also about the science of the sport as well. So the drug testing role seemed like a really good fit. And here we are 2 years later.
Yeah, I think that's how most people end up with their little jobs within the WNBF, is just having the passion for the sport. And when you believe in natural sport like we do, you gravitate towards the community and the environment within WNBF, and that opportunity is there for you to contribute in a different way, not just as an athlete. So did Andy sort of ask if you were up for the challenge, or did you volunteer for that?
Well, he basically told me that the drug testing job is the thankless job, it's the unglamorous job, it's the job that nobody wants, and he wasn't sure who he would get to do it. And I was like, I'll do it, because it's a combination of like being eager to please, always wanting to like make people happy, and there is an interest there as well, because I think with natural bodybuilding, and we'll get onto this later, like it's important that the sport is natural. Yeah. And it's really important that you have that division between tested and untested bodybuilding, and to be able to contribute towards that and help, not enforce that, that's the wrong word, help maintain the sport in a natural form is very important to me. So it was something I was really keen to get involved in.
Fantastic. And we're glad to have you. So could you tell our listeners, a lot of whom will be prepping right now for first timers, what the drug testing policy with the WNBF UK is?
Yeah, so basically on show day, myself and another tester, because obviously I don't test the female competitors, will be on hand. And the winners from all the classes will get taken away once they finish their class into the drug testing room, and they will be asked to produce a sample. And that sample is a urine sample, which would then get sent away to one of our WADA approved labs for testing. On top of the winners being tested, there are kind of like, we randomly pick different competitors from the different classes, and they also get tested as well. So even if you finish last in your class, you could get tested, so that you can't be assured you won't get tested if you don't win. Anyone can be tested. There is also out of season testing as well, especially for the pros. Andy will go on the road and will kind of like, well, not so much randomly, but kind of impromptu show-ups to people's gyms or people's workplaces to get samples. And on top of that, there is polygraphing for everybody as well, which when I first did it was a really interesting experience as an athlete, because they kind of hook you up to the monitors, they ask you the questions, and then you see the little on the line, just like you see in the films. And that's to make sure people are being honest with their answers, because obviously there are ways to get around a urine test, but it's very hard to get around a polygraph, and the two together make it a pretty robust testing protocol. And I mean, these things catch people out. I mean, people last year were stripped of their titles, one unfortunately because of a pre-workout stimulant that their coach had recommended them to take the morning of the show to help with their vascularity. So it's really important that you go to the website and you check the drug testing protocols, and that you take responsibility for yourself with that, and read everything and make sure that there are no substances in your current stack or in your supplements that are going to potentially make you fail a test.
Like, so much you've said there's like absolute gold. Just to completely sort of highlight what you said at the end there, it's your responsibility to understand the drug testing policy. And as you say, unfortunately, if a coach has recommended you take a particular supplement or a particular pre-workout, if there's something in there that's in the banned list, even if you didn't realize it was in there because your coach suggested it, it's your reputation, it's your name that's sort of associated with that. It's your responsibility to make sure that you know what you're taking. So I completely agree with you there, saying that you need to, as an athlete, take responsibility to understand what's on that WADA approved list.
Absolutely. And I mean, obviously, if somebody's sample flags up, their B sample will be tested. So, or they'll be asked to produce another sample or go through another polygraph to ensure that everything has gone correctly, because obviously there is a very small margin of error in these things where the test could come up with an erroneous result. But obviously, if the second test is done as well, there's no kind of second chances. It's not like boxing with Canelo and the Mexican beef, you know, like if you fail, you're done. And what would happen then is the WNBF would contact the other natural federations, your NPAs, your BNBFs, your UKDFBAs, let them know that this specific athlete has failed the test and what they failed for. So, I mean, it's one and out. So you need to be careful with these things, because if you are a passionate natural athlete and you aren't knowingly taking any bad substances, you could essentially be writing off your whole natural career, at least for 10 years, if you make this error. So really important to make sure with these things. Yeah,
absolutely. And where could athletes find that the drug testing policy so that they can go and have a look at it?
WNBF website has all the links. And also, I mean, we tend to follow the WADA protocols. So if you look at WADA, if you look at their website as well, and you look at their kind of rules, that's kind of a really good place to start as well. But WNBF website has everything you need. Yeah, they're great. They've got everything on there. I'll make sure we'll pop a link in the notes as well for the podcast, just so easy access, but definitely check out the website. And awesome. Just to kind of cover off again, so we have all the winners are tested. We have random drug testing, urine samples on the day as well, and our polygraphing, and for our pro athletes, out of season testing as well. Yes. Fantastic. Okay, awesome. What does show day look like for you then, David, as a drug tester with the WNBF UK? Okay, so show day, I mean, if we just look at the drug testing, because you'll know yourself from being backstage, you get pulled in all sorts of different directions, and you'll help people find places, help an athlete get to the right place so they don't miss their stage time. But from a purely drug testing protocol, I'll kind of like be organizing the paperwork, because unsurprisingly, there's a lot of paperwork with these things. And then I'll be waiting to pounce when people come off stage. Me and hopefully my team. One of our pro preppers, Natalie, her husband, Matt, was a fantastic help. He's been assisting with the drug testing. And Andy's mum has also been helping with the drug testing as well. So our little squad will be waiting at the edge of the stage for the classes to come off. And if it's random tests, we'll have kind of like rolled a dice or something to kind of pick the person out, and we'll get them. Otherwise, we're waiting for the winner, and then we'll just say, come with us, take them to the drug testing room, get their sample, and you'll know yourself from your own test last year That's not always a quick process.
No.
People sometimes need time. Bodybuilders tend to be a little bit dehydrated. And once you get the test, once you get the sample, fill in the paperwork, they get sent away with a copy, you keep a copy, and then it's back to being poised on the edge of the stage again to do it all over. And that's basically the whole day.
Yeah.
One after another. Because one of the great things about the WNBF is they really endeavor to do the most drug testing of any of the feds. Because a lot of feds, they'll just do winners, or some feds, I don't want to use the word pseudo-natural, but some feds don't really test enough or any of their athletes. So while there's still a natural fed, the enforcement of it isn't there. So the great thing about the WNBF is we do the most testing, we do the most comprehensive testing as well. And while it gives me gray hairs how busy and stressful it is, it's an important process to have in place.
Completely. And just to sort of harken back to maybe, I guess, my experience being drug tested. The first time I was urine tested was at the first timers event. And it was a very, very warm day. We're obviously dehydrated anyway. So I guess my advice would be just don't panic if you're pulled over for a urine test. I honestly was so dehydrated, and then it was the thinking about it was not making it any easier to have to provide a sample. And when you come off stage, you've got a lot of adrenaline and stuff as well. Your body's probably not thinking about needing to go for a wee. So you guys have been brilliant. Just said, go away, have a little drink of water, maybe have something small to eat as well. Just switch your body off thinking about show, and then come back when you feel like you're ready to go for a wee. And then I actually had been pulled over for the random testing, and then got tested again. I remember coming off stage after winning at the end of the day, the novice class, and you pulled me over to say I had to give another sample. And I thought you were joking because I'd had such a nightmare for the random test. And I was like, oh no, not again. But so it's even that in itself, if you're picked to provide a random sample and then you were to win again, as a winner, you're tested again. So it's very stringent and very sort of thorough, the testing. And I guess, also to touch on what you've said about maybe other federations not always, or us being particularly focused on ensuring that we are doing everything that we can to test athletes in the right way and protect natural sport. I guess the reality is it's because it costs a hell of a lot of money to run these drug testing protocols. It relies on people like you volunteering your time and expertise. So why, in your opinion, is it so important that the WNBF UK take this as seriously as they do?
It's a really good question, but I think it's a really simple answer as well. I mean, it's natural bodybuilding, and we want natural competitors to be competing. And the only way to ensure that it's a level playing field for all the athletes is to make sure that there's robust testing in place that is going to enforce that, and it's going to eliminate anyone who is not following the rules. I mean, it's rare that these things happen. I mean, over my years competing, there's only been a handful of people I can think of who were, tested and caught, but could more have been caught if more robust testing was in place at these other federations? That would be my kind of question. But really important. And that's not to say that untested sport isn't incredible. I mean, some of my absolute idols, you've got Arnold Schwarzenegger, you got James Flex Lewis, you got Ronnie Coleman. These were the guys I grew up watching and, aspiring to be like. But natural sport is natural sport, and it should stay that way. And that's why it's so important that whatever the cost, and it is expensive, and it adds on to the cost of competing as a WNBF competitor. It's one of the more expensive federations to compete in, but that's not because people are looking to line their pockets. It's because we're looking to have a fair playing field for everyone. We're bringing in the latest technology with top of the line drug testing, the polygraphing. It's all for the athlete, and that's important to note as well. Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, it's just they're two different sports, aren't they? There's nothing against, as you say, non-tested sport. It's an art, but it's a completely different ball game to what we're playing within the natural scene, and what we're doing is also incredible, and it needs to be upheld and
and showcased for being completely natural. So yeah, absolutely. So you've been competing for 9 years now. Is that right? I've got that right.
Yeah, first year was 13. So yeah,
this is
thereabouts.
You're 10. So you've progressed within that time loads, Dave. Your size and condition on stage as well has improved. And you won your first British title with the NPA last year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So what's that journey been like for you progressing as a natural athlete?
Oh gosh, I think my journey is probably slightly different to a lot of people's. I only started lifting weights because of injury. I'd always been a very keen footballer, and that was what I wanted to do. That was my sport. But I ended up having a really bad torn cruciate ligament when I was younger. And 17 years ago, sorry, I ended up getting a knee reconstruction operation, very serious surgery. And part of that, I was kind of pushed into the gym by the physios to lift weights, to start like building the strength in the joint and stuff like that. And that kind of time point, I lifted weights for a few years. And then I went to see my friend compete in the 2011, I think it was 11 or 12 WNBF Scottish. And while I was there, I happened to see David Kay compete. And I saw his posing routine, and it blew me away.
Yeah.
And I decided this was something I really wanted to do. But going into it, I mean, this was before there was huge amounts of information, huge amounts of coaches online. I didn't know anything. You know, I prepped myself 3 years, and no surprise, didn't do particularly well. Didn't really understand what needed to be done, didn't have enough information. Bodybuilding.com blogs don't really give you enough info to do it. But then after that, kind of like 2019, 2020, 2022, worked with really good coaches. First, a friend of mine, Lainey Strath in Aberdeen, who was fantastic. She helped me really raise my level. And then laterally with Andy and Steph assisting with my coaching in 2020 and last year. And I think just the consistency of process, that's the key. That's what makes the progress. There's no magic formula of workout plan. There's no magic formula of diet. It's just do good stuff, do it consistently for a long time. And that's what I did. And in the end, it led to some pretty good results last year. So yeah.
It really did. And I think even, I love what you're saying there about the beginning of your journey not being perfect. I guess that a lot of people now, because there is so much access to information, there's so much access and exposure to the industry through social media, people expect their journey to be optimal, and they're always pushing for this idea of the perfect journey, and every day having to look completely optimal, this amount of sleep and eating your meals and training this hard and, you know, RIR and all this sort of stuff, which of course has a massive impact over time if you're doing everything consistently right. As we say, consistency's king. But just the activity of pushing yourself in the gym and eating relatively well, and over the period of time, not every day needs to be perfect, but what you do most consistently over time, you have seen progress and you've refined your art and across the time that you've been training. You know, and probably, as you say, as you've had exposure to prep coaches and improved your quality of training, nutrition, things have also improved with time, but time being the most kind of consistent factor, and you've just given it your all over the last 10 years, and it's paid off. That's fantastic. What, I guess this is a big question, but what does it mean to you to be a natural athlete?
I think this was one, because obviously this isn't a spoiler for any other people watching, but you gave me the questions in advance so that I could think about it and try and come up with some answers and kind of really reflect on it before we spoke. This was one I found really hard. Because there was a part of me that's like, oh, it's a badge of honor being a natural competitor, you're flying the flag. But then part of me was like, well, it's just, for me, it's normal. I can't see myself ever not being a natural competitor. Doing things the natural way just feels like the right way for me. The question of would I ever go the other side would never really one that was on my mind. So it's just the way it should be done for me. That's what being a natural competitor is the way it should be done.
And I like being the evil person behind the scenes that gets to write the questions, because I honestly, to be honest, a bit like you, Dave, I don't know how I would necessarily answer that. And my initial instinct would probably be very similar to say what to say there. Yeah, you're proud to be a natural athlete, but it just seems to be the way that you've gravitated, and it doesn't seem to be a thought that's ever crossed my mind either. And yeah, I'm glad we had the same thought there. I was maybe a bit evil throwing that question in there, not knowing how to answer it myself. So I guess, why do you choose to compete as a natural athlete? Like we obviously said, it's never crossed your mind to compete or to train as an assisted competitor, but is there anything underlying there why you would choose to train and compete naturally?
I think, as we spoke about, I mean, I'm doing a master's degree in dietetics at the moment.
Yeah.
I've always had a keen knowledge of nutrition and also of like anatomy and health, so like how the body works. And as much as steroids, growth hormones, those sort of things can be great for building fantastic muscles, there is also a real risk to your overall health and longevity taking these things. And it is very much a refined art to get dosages right so that it doesn't have really bad effects on your health. I mean, a great example of this is the gym I train at in Aberdeen, in Edinburgh, which you train at as well, Spartan Gym. Shout out to Spartan Gym. The guy who runs that gym, John Wynn, fantastic guy. He told me a couple of months ago now that there are people at Spartan who are taking more steroids and growth hormone than Ronnie Coleman was when he won all those Olympias. It puts it in perspective, because more isn't always better, but more is what people tend to do. And it leads to lazy coaching as well. Rather than really manipulating diet and really working hard to get people in shape, they just push more drugs at them. And it has led to, if you look at the trend in recent years in untested sport, a lot of these guys are dying, and before their time as well. And I'd quite like to live for a while. So I think that's a good reason to be a natural competitor.
You've got your masters to finish.
I know.
Yeah, and I think, see, for me specifically, of course, my perspective is to see it as a female competitor, and on top of the real health concerns and heart attacks and everything, and kidney issues, everything that goes along with people who are taking steroids, I see it as from a female perspective, in that it's just it can completely change somebody's life depending on what you take. It can really, really affect your whole life, really. Your ability to have children, your actual physical anatomy can change. So yeah, I think for me, health, and particularly being able to showcase what is possible to achieve as a female athlete without going down that route, is part of the reason why I would choose to compete naturally and to train naturally. Because, as you say, we do this because we love the sport, and we love to be healthy, and we love learning about our bodies and using the process of prep and training to push ourselves mentally and physically. There isn't a need, I don't think, necessarily to everyone to always take steroids.
To put a pin on it, I would say my big advice for anyone who is thinking about taking performance-enhancing drugs is do your research.
Yeah.
Make sure you know exactly what you're getting yourself in for. Make sure you know the right process for doing it, because if you do it right, it can have very minimal impacts on your health.
Of course.
I mean, look at Arnold Schwarzenegger. Granted, he had what was the very first pig heart valve put on his heart, but that might happen even without the steroids. But you can live a long, healthy life, but you've just got to, like anything else, you've got to make sure you do it the right way, you do it the healthy way.
Yeah, absolutely. So as a natural athlete, why do you choose to compete in natural federations? Why don't you choose to compete in some of the untested feds?
I think there is the potential for it to be like boys against men if you compete as a natural in an untested federation, because the amount of muscle that these untested guys have is just incredible. I mean, they're fantastic athletes. And that, again, it's a reason to compete in a natural fed. It's a reason why the drug testing is so important, because it puts that level playing field in place. I know that I'm going against other non-drug taking guys who are shorter than 173 centimeters or who are lighter than 71 kilos, you know, and that way I know I'm going to get a fair shake of the stick when I'm on stage. And also you're surrounded by your peers rather than by people who are maybe on a different journey to you or in a different environment to you.
Yeah. Fantastic. I love that. So you competed with the NPA last year, and you won your first British title. Again, huge congratulations. So what did that mean to you to walk away with your British title last year?
Yeah, it was a big deal. I mean, when we were setting out the goals for the season, I mean, and that was my first season competing as an open competitor, because I was lucky enough in 2020 to win the novice British title with the UK DFBA.
Yeah.
Granted, there was only 2 of us in the class, but the fact that anybody got to stage in the year of COVID was an achievement in itself. So it was my first year competing as a mister. So when we sat down and set goals for the season, the goal was to make it to a final rather than anything else. So to actually be able to go to a final, and the gentleman, Bryn, who I competed against in the final, was an absolute gent. He was a lovely guy. To be able to stand on stage with someone else who was in such good condition and to come away with the title was it was one of those kind of like career moments, one of those ones that hadn't even made it to the whiteboard yet, because I thought it was beyond where I was. But yeah, absolutely fantastic. It meant the world.
Good. I watched you on the live stream.
Did you? Oh no.
I was no, honestly, I was sitting rooting for you at home, and it was competitive. They worked you both so hard. Rounds and rounds of pose and comparison rounds. It was great to see, and you could tell how much it meant to you. I'm so glad that you've ticked that off. It wasn't even on the whiteboard yet, and you've ticked it off. That's epic.
Yeah, and I think again, every prep throws up its own challenges, and people will discover this. I mean, maybe the novice first timers, it might be their first prep. So it'll be the dieting that'll be the hardest bit, or the regimented nature for the extended period of time. I mean, this last prep, it was about managing injuries. And when we went into it, the idea was, because Andy and I, we always had our kind of like our brain trust meeting before the start of the season of like, right, and the idea was we're going to strip things back and see how you look before we decide whether we're going to go for it or not. Because I had really bad issues with my back. I had an umbilical hernia, and then developed a secondary hernia, like a groin hernia as well, during the season. And being able to just kind of like continue training and continue making progress with those injuries was like the big challenge of this prep. So I think you asked like what it meant to me to actually be able to get to stage at all in competitive condition with those challenges was like really important for me. So it showed that, you know, like whatever the kind of obstacle, I could overcome it and make things happen. Because for me, the diet was always easy. People will hate me for saying this because the diet's hard for a lot of people, but you tell me what to do, I'll do it. You know, it's why it's easy for me to get to stage and get in condition. But injuries, not so much. Wait till you guys get older, you'll enjoy it for yourselves.
I'm not looking forward to that. No, I think that it's interesting because everyone faces different challenges through a prep, as you've said. And especially in a first prep, you don't know what you're walking into, so it's all new, it's all a challenge. And you learn through probably your first, your second prep, like what your strengths are and what your areas of challenge are going to be, and they might develop and change over time. Probably similar to you, I'm very much, right, I know what I need to do. This is what I'm doing with my diet, head in the game, let's just get it done. Doesn't necessarily feel nice, but there was never a question about whether that was going to happen or not. And for some people, the adherence to the diet is a huge part, but everyone has their own sort of mental battles with, and I think a lot of it, even on the diet front, is a mental game. But, you know, with injuries, it's about being smart, isn't it? And it's being able to sort of adapt and right, okay, this isn't the way ideally it would want to go. And I remember speaking to you a few times through your prep, and you were in a lot of pain, and it was trying to adapt your strategy and still having that goal in sight and dog-headedness that you were going to get there, and being able to work with your coach and come forward with strategies that were going to let you get to stage. And as you say, getting there was already the win. To walk away with the win on top is just the sweetest victory, I suppose.
Yeah, big time.
Fantastic. So you also competed with the WNBF UK at our Supernaturals event last year.
Yes.
What was the experience like being on stage instead of being backstage at WNBF?
It was weird actually, because it was in the same venue where we'd done the drug testing the year before for the previous Supernaturals in Birmingham. Really, really nice arena. And it was great. I mean, first thing to note is the WNBF Supernatural show and the First Timers show last year were like the biggest natural bodybuilding shows the UK has had in an incredibly long time. So there was a certain element of controlled chaos. And that is quite normal at a bodybuilding show as well, because the nerves are jangling, because everyone is trying to get into and trying to focus. They're nervous. They're going on stage soon. Should I be eating? Should I not? Like, the nerves are there, but you know, the team were great. Knowing a lot of the people personally probably helped me too, because I was seeing friends rather than members of staff. And process wise, I mean, people coming in for the first time would think, oh, this is going slowly, or why has this not happened yet? But actually it runs pretty smooth, especially for the amount of competitors that were there. And everything was done at the right time. Everyone was on stage when they were supposed to be on stage. So for me, it was just like really smooth experience. Everyone was great. And I think, gosh, I've forgotten the name of the Tanners, but the Tanners were lovely, especially the gentleman. He was such a nice guy. And like, it's those little interactions that make it worthwhile. If you go in hinging your happiness at the show on whether you go away with a trophy or not, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be disappointed. But if you can go in and enjoy the camaraderie with your fellow competitors, the banter you get with the person that's tanning your ass crack, you know, like these are the gold. This is the gold, I tell you.
You're speaking my language, Dave. 100%. The day, you know, I've always said this and you said it earlier, getting to show day in condition, you know, ready to get tanned up, sitting backstage, that's the win. Like, I honestly see bodybuilding like a marathon sport. Like, the competing happens every day of prep up until show day, and the show day is crossing the finish line, and it's like literally the last 100 meters, the last 100-meter sprint of a marathon that you're wanting to just get across the finish line. And you want to just celebrate it, you want to enjoy it, you want to be with people who are like-minded, and share that experience with them. And people like yourself who volunteer their time backstage, it's really interesting to hear that you got that same sort of feeling that I did around, you know, how happy everyone was just to be there, and want to be part of it, and volunteer their time, and everyone's excited to be there. I think that's just part of the magic that makes the WNBF UK such a great atmosphere.
I mean, Andy and Steph, the presidents of the federation, they're really passionate about the sport, and their love of bodybuilding and their desire to have a clean, fair competition for natural guys to compete in, that just kind of feeds down to all the rest of us as well. And I don't think we would be working with them or volunteering with them if we didn't have a similar mindset. So, you know, if you see someone backstage at WNBF, that you'll be able to have a conversation with them about who's been good this season, who their idols are, good bodybuilders, what's going to be happening at Worlds, because we're all just really passionate about it.
100%. Could not agree more. It's fantastic. So I guess, what sets the WNBF UK apart from the other federations that you've competed with in the past 10 years?
I think, as we mentioned earlier, it is the robust drug testing protocols. And I'm not just saying that because I'm the drug tester. And no other federation have I done a polygraph before.
Yeah.
You know, and I know that some of them do them, but I've never sat a polygraph as someone who didn't win a class.
Yeah.
And the drug testing protocols, not just the winners being tested, you know, and also just the sheer scale of the show, like over 100 competitors, you know, classes with 14, 15, 16 guys in for the open classes, not just for the novices and for the juniors, you know. I mean, and as well as that, you look at the pathway, and no other federation would have you compete for a world finals where backstage you would look around and you've got Alberto Nunez next to you. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
The WNBF is the elite when it comes to the worlds, when it comes to the pro classes. It's where all the kind of like really, really top guys ply their trade internationally as well. So a lot of the guys that people probably follow on their Instagram are probably competing with WNBF.
Yeah.
So the potential that you can get if you do well there is probably the highest out of any of the different shows that I've done in the past.
Yeah, totally, completely agree. I think so the WNBF UK, the first ever event, the Supernaturals event back in 2021. Yeah, that was the first bodybuilding show I ever went to. So I had exposure to the sport through social media, but that was the first show that I ever went to. And I remember seeing athletes who done well there and then following them on social media. And then to be able to meet them backstage, and maybe some of them were then sitting on the judging panel or volunteering their time with the federation, and having exposure to these people and realizing how accessible and how community driven everybody is who's involved in the WNBF, and how everyone wants to help and give advice and just share in their love of the sport. I think that to me is a huge differentiator to other federations I competed with.
Yeah, very true.
Just the accessibility to people who want to be championing for natural sport.
Absolutely.
Okay, so kind of the final real question I have for you is thinking about providing a little bit of support, I suppose, to our first timers that are prepping at the moment, or our novice athletes who are prepping at the moment. What would your advice be to first timer or novice athletes listening today?
That perspective is really important.
Yeah.
A lot of times, and I've been guilty of this myself, when you are judging your progress, you're always looking at really, really top level guys, and you're looking at Instagram lighting. You're looking at people who are absolutely super shredded. Then you look at yourself, you look back at them, you look back at yourself, and you're like, I don't look as good as I should. But what you need to do is you need to look at it compared to where you were and where you are now. Because bodybuilding, more than any other sport, more than most other sports, is very much you versus you. And I know that's so cliche and so cheesy, but it really is. It's you versus you. And how you view something is very, very important in that regard. I mean, a good example of this is I competed in 5 shows in 2022. So it's a very busy season.
Yeah.
And the WNBF show, which was the second show I competed in, I placed second last out of a lineup of 6. I placed 5th, so I didn't place. And then at the NPA, I went on and I won a British title. So if I was looking at it from the NPA perspective, I'd be like, it's brilliant. I'm a British title winner. I'm amazing. And then there would be, if I was looking at the WNBF in a certain way, of like, I'm a no-hoper. I've finished 5th, no trophy, no success. But it's about how you look at it. I could have looked at that WNBF show as a failure. But what I remember from that is feedback I got from the judges saying it was the best I'd ever looked. The competitiveness of that lineup, I didn't look out of place. The fact that, and he might laugh if he actually watches this, Josh Olagoke, who's now a BNBF pro, who won the BNBF Northern show quite easily, in fact, backstage, he looked at me as a peer and as a competitor. So he was kind of like glaring at me, giving me the eyes until he knew he had me beat. He was like backstage. And like, that was a positive because he saw me and the physique I had as a potential threat. Yeah. Only until he saw the rest of it. But like, you know what I mean? Like, and that shows like, that's positives that can be taken from that. Oh, and here's a simpler way of looking at it. And this was something my dad said to me the other day. Actually, this is cheesy. We can cut this if it's silly. But I do a lot of driving because I go up and down to see my dad in Aberdeen. And one thing drivers in Scotland, for whatever reason, love to do, or everywhere, is they love to tailgate you on the motorway. You're going 70 miles an hour and they're 1 car length behind you. Yeah. And that really annoys me. I get road ragey about it. So you look in your rearview mirror and they're super close to you. And my dad said to me, like, well, why don't you just look in the wing mirror instead? They'll look a lot further away and then you'll stress about it less. And that's perspective. The car is the same distance behind you, no matter what. But if you look in the rear view, it's really close. You look in the wing mirror, it's further away. How you choose to view the situation will affect your reaction to it. And your reaction to it is the most important thing. So you've got to find the positives in your prep. You've got to find the positives in your progression and not just focus on the negatives or the losses or the lack of trophies. I mean, it took me 6 years to win my first trophy from 2013 to 2019. But then I just kept working on the weaknesses. And in the end, it all came good. So you just got to keep working at it. I
love that. And that is not getting cut, Dave. That is getting kept. I love that that analogy. That's perfect. Completely. And it is really hard, I think, not to look in your rear view when how everyone is on social media these days, and you're comparing yourself to people you'll be competing against before, you know, you can find out who's going to be at shows, and you can look at their physique and see their best angles on Instagram, and then also you compare yourself to the people who have larger followings, who have incredibly successful first seasons or do really, really well. You don't know anything about their situation, how long they've been training, how long they've been prepping in comparison to you, how long they've been training in general to prepare for their first ever show compared to you. So yeah, it's all about perspective and as you say, you versus you. I love it. We're being cheesy. I love it. You versus you has been the perfect way you need to kind of go into your first season, I think. Perfect. So Dave, I'm so glad that we got to have this chat here in this format. It really actually reminds me of that first time that we spoke properly, which was when we went to the WNBF UK posing workshop in Glasgow together last year. And the traffic from Glasgow back to Edinburgh gave us a lot of time to have a chat. It was a lot of backed up traffic all the way home. But the posing workshops are kicking off again this year. I think actually by the time this is out, the London workshop will have happened. That's happening on the 19th of March. Do you know when the next one is after that?
Oh gosh, put me on the spot. I don't know. But they do happen on a semi-regular basis between now and the shows. And that's really important. You could have the best physique in the world, but if you don't showcase it in the right way, you could get beaten by somebody who just poses that little bit better, holds their poses that little bit better. So yeah, get yourself along to one of those posing workshops and practice. It's important to practice. 100%.
Even just talking about meeting people that are like-minded, meeting people who are in the same boat as you, in the same situation. Those posing workshops are fantastic. You get to meet faces that you can then meet again on show day. And because they're held kind of locally, so I think there's one in Birmingham and one in Scotland coming up. You'll get to meet people who are in your kind of general area. And like me and you, we obviously train at the same gym, so we get to see each other pretty regularly. But that was kind of like, we got to know each other through the federation. We probably would have been training at the same gym and not really have known each other all that well if we hadn't shared in that experience earlier in the year. So perfect. I can't finish up today without going through the quick fire question round with you, Dave. And I know that you were having a little listen of the last few, so hopefully you were expecting the quick fire question round. So I'm going to ask you 10 rapid fire questions and I need you to answer instinctively. So the first thing that comes into your head. Are you ready? Okay. Cream of rice or protein oats?
Protein oats.
Post show meal of choice?
Burger.
Yeah. I cannot go wrong with a burger. Pump or stim pre-workout?
I don't use pre-workouts.
You don't use them? Coffee or nothing?
Coffee.
I used to be a coffee girl. Prep sort of pushed me to the pump pre-workout because I was so flat, but I used to be a coffee girl. High rep range or low rep range?
High.
Steps or Stairmaster?
Steps.
Free weights or machines?
Free weights.
Are shows one from the front or one from the back?
Oh, God. Traditionally, one from the back.
Yeah. Okay, off season or prep?
Prep.
Best part of show day?
God, that's a hard one. That's not very quick fire. Walking out on the stage. First walkout.
First walkout? Yeah, I do love that. All the adrenaline. And this is definitely not a quick fire question, but it's the final question. What's your favourite thing about being a natural bodybuilder?
The community.
Me too.
Like you say, like-minded people.
Yeah. Awesome. Right. Thank you so much for your time today, Dave. And thank you to everyone who's listening along at home. We're going to be back in 2 weeks' time to talk to another amazing natural bodybuilder. Episode 5 of the podcast will be with one of our newly crowned WNBF Men's Physique Pros and the 2022 World's Men's Physique Overall Champion, Mr. Charlie Brisburn. Charlie and I will be jumping into a great chat about his pro card and overall win at Worlds in LA and discussing his experience of prepping and competing as a new dad with a young family. Let's just have an honest chat about what it actually takes to juggle all of that, and the things that everyone should plan for and consider before jumping in. Until then, thank you again, Dave, for your time. Thank you to everyone listening at home. Everyone have a great couple of weeks. And this has been the WNBF UK Podcast.
Check out CNP, our sponsors, and sign up for our events at WNBFUK.com.